Peace, family. It's your brother B Knowledge Allah. You already know we're here with the B Knowledge Academy. I'm continuing. Free the land. We're getting it in. You watch my 5-state video. If you watch Independent Land, assassination of President Lincoln, and things of that nature, you know and understand where I'm coming from when it comes to the 5-state territory, right? The Black Belt Nation, that as a reparative act, right? Reparations is most fitting for Black folks here. It doesn't make sense to receive monetary compensation. It doesn't make sense to receive money or Federal Reserve notes, right? Credit, whatever it may be, whether it's $300,000, whether it's $3 million, and it isn't attached to land. So we're talking about the Malcolm X doctrine. We know because Malcolm Al-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz taught us that land is the basis of freedom. You know, he told us that land is tied to freedom, right? We know he told us that shout out to this shirt, because you left your mind in Africa. So we know these things. It says stolen from Africa. Brothers blessed me with this when I was in Canada. Shout out to the Canada Cipher, the God-born king. You left your mind in Africa. We understand our physical bodies were stolen from Africa and brought to the wilderness in North America. We know and understand our minds. Mindset, cultural values, ethics, morals was stolen from Africa, and dispersed and consequently dismantled amongst the European nations, right? And given to us watered down, because certain things have to be kept from the original people so they won't rise from that which they've come, right? Which is a mental death of power. So we're here to get it in. We're here to get it popping. We're not playing. I'm going to get to it. Malcolm X doctrine. Like I said, shout out to the guys in Canada, the brothers out in Canada, stolen from Africa. This is a dope line. The God-born king. We going to get it in. I'm going to share my screen. Today's lecture, I'm introducing a book to y'all, Foundations of the Black Nation, right? Ayamari Abu Bakari Obadeli I, right? Foundations of the Black Nation, a textbook of ideas behind the new Black nationalism, right? And the struggle for land in America, right? By Imari Abu Bakari Obadeli I, second president of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. I'm not going to get into the history of the Republic of New Africa right now. You can do the knowledge to that online. You can hit me up. We can build. I'll tell you what I know, right? I'll tell you what I'm learning. You watch my 5-state video, talk about Black Belt territory, independent land, assassination of President Lincoln, and things of that nature. You'll see where I'm coming from with the 5 states. So if you're caught up, you know and understand that the new African independence movement, right, period, is based towards land being the basis of freedom. The Malcolm X doctrine, that we lay claim internationally, lawfully, right, and with common sense to the 5 states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, right, and those surrounding, right, majority Black territories, and particularly beginning with the majority Black territories there already. We're going to get into this. I'm going to explain to you this, right? A textbook of ideas behind the new Black nationalism and struggle for land in America. This is where we're going with it. A reparative act cannot exist with just monetary funds or monetary compensation. It has to deal with land, because the Malcolm X doctrine, we all know, he brought to us, right, that land is the basis of freedom. So we're going to get right into this thing. The struggle is for land. That's a particular chapter I'm reading out of this book, because that's what I'm bringing to the people as far as we need this foundation before we get into the reparative committees and how to disperse the reparations and how to go about the land per se, more about plebescites. We're going to lay the foundation. Knowledge the foundation, right? I'm being knowledge, so we will have a solid ground, right, to walk on, so that we are on code. On code. Remember I talked about the djembe code. We got to be on code. We got to know what certain beats and rhythms and sciences audibly, right, are. We have to have that connection. So the struggle is for land, right? I believe in the Malcolm X doctrine, that we must organize upon this land and hold a plebiscite to tell the world that we are free and the land independent, and that after the vote, we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing a nation beyond contradiction. I'll say again, if you don't know, that's Brother Al-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz right now, my alarm clock. I say that because, you know, I'm a what, 5%. And Allah, right, our Father, he came through what? Temple number 7, who the minister there was Malcolm X. He said he was his what, alarm clock. So knowing that Malcolm was his alarm, that's why I say that's my alarm clock, right? He's who not just like black men all over the world, right, woke them up, or black men all over the wilderness in North America woke them up, right? He was the alarm clock for what? My particular what nation here in the wilderness in North America, the 5%, known as the nation of gods and earth. So I believe in the Malcolm X doctrine, that we must organize upon this land and hold a plebiscite to tell the world that we are free and the land independent, and that after the vote, we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing a nation beyond contradiction. Now we're going to get into eventually, but like I said, we're laying the foundation. We're going to get into eventually. We have to understand what state building is. Now, the black nation exists here, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And even within the black nation, since this book has been out, since Malcolm has what, returned to the essence or went home, since then, many nations within the black nation have formed. We're a nation within a nation, you know, a nation within the black nation here is 40-something million of us, right? Many tribes and nations amongst that. So where is our state building aspect? This is what Malcolm is talking about, the plebiscite, right? And the independent land, right? Establishing the nation beyond contradiction. He's talking about the nation state. Here's the book. Here's brother Dr. Imari Abubakar Obadeli, right? A founder of the Provisional Government Republic of New Africa. And this whole idea, right? A textbook of ideas behind the new black nationalism. Do you want this book? I don't think it's like all sold online like that. So if you hit me up, I'll give you the proper connect. I don't sell it myself. However, I know how to get it, you know? So just hit me up and I'll just shoot you an email if you want this book. So here we go. The struggle is for land. This is the chapter I'm reading out of because this is what I want to get and drive home. That there's no reparations outside of land. There's no independence outside of land. We have to stop this autonomy based on religious exemption and human and indigenous rights. We have to stop the autonomy or our so-called sovereignty, which is not really sovereignty, you know, here in America. Saying that the same, what I mean, for those that don't know what I mean, is that we have a lot of us who buy some land, use religious exemption for tax, or buy some land and use different United Nations charter treaties to be tax exempt because we're original indigenous people and we have the right to that all over the world. However, we're basing that on creating states, which they're really a lot of times just become what, neo-colonial, right? Semi-states, you know, I'll say, or they become neo-colonies, straight like that. And really just on your land, and you think you do what you want. However, it's really at the mercy of the federal government, which has happened numerous times. Once you get some type of numbers or influence, come in there and sweep everything up. So we're not talking about an autonomy or a sovereignty based on it's up to you to honor it or not, or there's a time limit, or I have to put in some paperwork or anything like that. The science is new black nationalism, that the black man and woman and their children today in the wilderness in North America and the Caribbean and South America and all that. How we're talking about the new African, the wilderness in North America, in the state that what? He has rights to. The book will explain. I'm not going to break down his words too much. You'll get it. Our struggle, no less than that of the Azanians, the Zimbabweans, the Guineans, is a struggle for land. It is not the Africans in America who struggle for such amorphous things as our rights in America or freedom, where neither of those is connected to land, are perpetuating a fraud upon themselves and others. It is that their analysis of what is fundamentally wrong with American society misses the mark. What is wrong is that American society suffers from entrenched racism, or upon correct analysis, they have failed to reason though to the most feasible and logical solution. Depart from American society. Again, the most feasible and logical solution, depart from American society. Worse, the white nationalism, right? Worse, the white nationalism, which all people in America constantly imbibe, has left many otherwise fine African minds, right? Left your mind in Africa, stolen from Africa. He said, worse, the white nationalism, which all people in America constantly imbibe, has left many otherwise fine African minds among us functionally unable to think of land, independent land, carved out of any part of what whites now call the United States, as a real part of our struggle for that wonderful but amorphous and elusive state called freedom. See, land for Zimbabweans and Azanians, for Guineans, for all the Africans in Africa, yes, but land for Africans in America, you can't be serious. Well, we are serious about Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. Perhaps the best way for people to untrack their what? Minds from the slaving inability to think of land as a real and legitimate goal of our struggle is to understand how a people acquires claim to land. There is, of course, the bandit rule of international law. Go figure. This says, essentially, that if a people steals land and occupies it for a long time, the world will recognize the land as belonging to them. This, of course, is the manner in which the United States acquired claim to most of America. White folks simply stole it and held it. As a people, we Africans in America have been cowed by this rule. We have cringed before it and before the power of the beast, as it were the only rule of land possession, right? So being that they stole America the way they think they did, or the way they did, our people have basically bear witness to that and become fearful based on this. And we thinking that's the only way to survive or do things, right? And then perpetuating the history and propaganda of war that they've spread across this world, right? There's only one way people really look at it. So what? He said, as a people, we Africans in America have been cowed by this rule. We have cringed before it and before the power of the beast, as if it were the only rule of land possession. There is, fortunately, a civilized rule of land possession, right? The black man fathers civilization. He said there's a civilized rule of land possession. It says if a people have lived on the land traditionally, if they have worked and developed it, and if they have fought to stay there, the land is theirs. It is upon this rule of international law that Africans in America rest their claim for land in America. Again, it is upon this rule of international law that Africans in America rest their claim for land in America. Because we have what? Lived on it, fought on it, worked it, developed it. That ain't no secret, especially down south. Everyone, grandparents or uncles or someone has, do, or used to own some land down there. That's a whole build, but we're going to continue. The struggle is for land. We have lived for over 300 years in the so-called Black Belt. We have worked and developed the land, and we have fought to stay there against night riders and day courts, against cultural genocide and economic privation, against bad crops and no crops, against terror and ignorance, and the urgings of relatives to come north. I'm in New Jersey. You know, everyone is in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, you know, the Northeast or the Midwest or way west. There's pockets all between there, but that's where the bulk is demographically, you know what I'm saying? So against urgings, right, of relatives to come north. In the Black Belt, running through the 5 states that the Republic claims as the national territory of the Black nation, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, we have met all the criteria for land possession required of us by international law. Listen to me, people. This is our thing. Let's stop playing with them. It says in the Black Belt, running through the 5 states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, we have met all the criteria for land possession required of us by international law. I'm not talking about based on a pre-slavery treaty. I'm not talking about based on a war 1,000 years ago. I'm not talking about just because we're indigenous. That's not enough. That's enough for people to maybe let you slide doing what you want culturally and getting off on some taxes. As far as sovereignty, that's not enough. So what? We got to bring it up a notch. What is our claim to land internationally? Because a land claim is an international fight. Because we all on the planet Earth. We just been what? Outcasts. And it's our time to what? Rise back up. Stolen from Africa. It's a fire in my belly. Y'all go see. The problem with international law is that there is nobody who enforces it except the powerful. Right? Except the powerful. That's us. He gonna go in, but keep in mind, that's really us. Powerful nations enforce international law only when it suits them or when they are forced to. Or when they are forced to. The essential strategy of our struggle for land is to array enough power, as in jiu-jitsu, with the concentration of karate as key moments, to force the greatest power, the United States, to abide by international law, to recognize and accept our claims to independence and land. The purpose of this strategy can be further simplified. It is to create a situation for the United States where it becomes cheaper to relinquish control of the 5 states than to continue war against us, take back or hold the area. Again, continue war, not just them getting it popping or trying to fight for the land once we stand up for it, like Malcom said, ready to defend ourselves. Let me remind y'all of that. He said, what? That we must organize upon this land and hold a plebiscite to tell the world that we are free and the land independent, and that after the vote, we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing a nation beyond contradiction. Right? So again, the purpose, again, he says what? To abide by the international law, to recognize and accept our claims to independence and land. The purpose of this strategy can be further simplified. It is to create a situation for the United States where it becomes cheaper to relinquish control of the 5 states than to continue war against us, to take back or hold the area. Again, continue war. Like Dr. Mario Badeli said, like I've heard him say in a lecture before, that they haven't signed a peace treaty with us. They didn't with Elijah. He said they didn't with what? Delaney. They've continued war, especially when it comes to slavery being war. It's over for that. Let's go. Freedom cannot be amorphous and misty. It must be for land and sovereignty. Otherwise, foreign powers have no right to speak in our behalf, let alone provide other support. 4, unless the struggle for land and sovereignty is a domestic matter between citizens of a nation who are treated right and those who are treated wrong. And it is to be settled as a domestic matter by them. So when you're fighting for civil rights, integration, when you base your life on a better school system, bullshitting about vaccinations and all that, just don't even send your children there. Today, doctors, schools, nothing. It's simple. We don't get it. But it's because we need to be amongst our own, where we control the quality of the air and the food and the education, and we could get our people right. Because freedom cannot be amorphous and misty. You know, the lessons talk about the fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect. That is the predecessor of rain, hail, snow, or earthquakes, or rain, hail, and snow in particular. It can't be misty. You gotta be able to see it, clearly. So what? For unless the struggle for land and sovereignty, it is a domestic matter between citizens of a nation who are treated right and those who are treated wrong. When it becomes a land fight, that involves the whole world. Those ports of those East Coast seas and that Gulf, the precious materials in the ground, the airspace, the economic damage it will do to the American economy, that's an international matter. That's why the world can speak up to it. But when it comes to the rules and regulations of America and how they treat niggas over here, people can't say too much about that, especially if we marching just to sit next to, like you said, to sit next to them on the toilet. marching for that, to be able to shit next to them. Fuck out of here. Excuse me. Let's go. The struggle is for land. Therefore, we cannot stand before the world unsure of whether or not we are American citizens. And again, this isn't an order. These are different passages and important parts of the chapter, Struggle for Land. Again, I'm reading from Foundations of the Black Nation. Be Knowledge Academy. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get it. We talk about the Malcolm X doctrine, that we need sovereign land here, right? And that land is the basis of freedom. And without that, as a reparative act, we ain't going nowhere. I don't want to hear that monetary reparations if it's not what tied to land. Therefore, we cannot, or it's supposed to say we cannot stand before the world unsure of whether or not we are American citizens. No person in America, descendant of African slaves, is an American citizen unless he is naturalized West Indian or South American. You know, brothers from Caribbean, Brazil, with Argentina, whatever, come over here to get the naturalized nationality. Black nationalists, we must come out of that delicious no man's land where one has his cake and eats it too, where one is not an American citizen when it is popular not to be, like in a black nationalist rap session, right? Everyone get on radio, fuck America and all this. Hey, fuck America on the radio, like it's cool. Everyone on the radio, right? But they don't raise their family like that. You want to know what a man on? Look at his babies. But is one when it's convenient to be, or when we set our goals in the struggle for freedom. When Malcolm pop up, right, everybody there. But Cal, right, prior to that. We understand, though, this is why the re-education is needed. You need to understand that, yeah, though you got your ancestors' shoulders to step on. However, I'm trying to build shoulders big enough for my babies to be on. I'm trying to build shoulders big enough for y'all babies too. If they could listen, they down for the ride. Listen, let's get it. The first appropriate legislation required at that moment and still required was that which would make possible for the now free African an informed free choice and informed acceptance or rejection of the citizenship offer. Again, the imam, the big homie, your educator, right? Those that are leaders in the community, the so-called black politicians. We need a re-education, the new African political science. We need to gear our mindset and political goals, right, and orientation for those under us, right, or y'all, as that first appropriate legislation, right? It says that the education offered him after the 13th Amendment confirmed the policy of dehumanization. We need to end that. We usually go with the flow that that's sufficient. We became citizens because of X, Y, and Z, and we just go keep moving. Again, the education offered him after the 13th Amendment confirmed the policy of dehumanization. You know the hymn we talking about, right? Us. So now, again, following the 13th Amendment, the education of the African in America seeks to base the African self-esteem on how well the African assimilates white American folk ways and values. A hardly more palatable depersonalization than that which occurred during slavery. So again, you see, he's talking about it's not enough to just be American citizens, right? We're talking about sovereignty and land. It's not enough just to go amongst the world, right, and be iffy or on the fence about it, depending on how America treating you. The first appropriate legislation is to understand that what the education offered after the 13th Amendment was, or in the realm of dehumanization. It says, so the first appropriate legislation required, and is still required, was that which what? Make possible for the now free African an informed free choice. An informed free choice, because we never had the choice. Got stolen from Africa. Got stolen from Africa, right? Bought here, fought in the revolution, fought in the Civil War, and then was told, now you're here with this amendment. He gonna get into it. Worse, the advice given the African concerning rights under international law suggested that there was no option to him other than American citizenship. For the most part, he was co-opted into spending his political energies in organizing and participating in constitutional conventions, and then voting for the legislators which subsequently approved the 14th Amendment. Not all of the Africans' political energies were spent this way. The pull of nationalism was strong even at that moment, and this is an important still to be told story. In such circumstances, the presentation of the 14th Amendment to state legislators for whose members the African had voted, and the amendment's subsequent approval by these legislators could in no sense be considered a plebiscite. Again, this 13th and 14th Amendment can't be counted as what we talking about. That's not the plebiscite. That wasn't our choice to become what? American citizens. That was what? Enforced, tricked. The fundamental requirements were lacking. First, adequate and accurate information. 4, the advice given to freedmen was so bad it amounts to fraud. Like they tricked us. It was fraudulent the way they got those that even had good intentions and led a lot of us into burning homes. It was fraudulent. Not just Martin Luther King before him. That been a trend. You heard? Those that know that been a trend. For the advice given to freedmen was so bad it amounts to fraud. A second, stealing of our birthright. Second, a chance to choose among 4 options, right? So the fundamental requirements were lacking for that 13th and 14th Amendment, which they choose if they want to honor, whenever they want to honor it. It was lacking what? Adequate and accurate information, and it was also lacking what? A chance to choose among 4 options. U.S. citizenship, return to Africa, emigration to another country, and 4, the creation of a new African nation on American soil. Now, we know about immigration. That's a big topic, especially in the Trump era, or the Trump era, right? Emigration is moving somewhere, plans to stay there. You leave America, go, stay in another land or state. You know what I'm saying? Simple as that. Emigration to another country, and 4, the creation of a new African nation on American soil. And this is what we're talking about, the Republic of New Africa. That's what this great brother, Mario Bedelli, right? Advancing upon the Malcolm X doctrine that we must hold a plebiscite here, right? And we must vote to have the land free. Let the world know that, you understand? And be ready to defend it. The Republic of New Africa, those states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. We meet the international requirements for it. See, everyone agrees land. Every nation, misnomer gang. Every nation, misnomer religious institution or organization. Every nation, misnomer a culture, right? Or whatever the case may be. This is our claim to land. We all agree, all those people agree to we need land, we need independence. So here's the platform, here's the blueprint. What better than this? It's the best part of the country. We're owned the whole damn thing and some of a piece of the world. We technically, we wouldn't sound stupid, willing to defend the whole shit. We really wouldn't sound stupid. But we gonna say, oh, okay, being the civilized people we are, what matches mathematics? Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. Okay, so I'm gonna go into this section of the book on U.S. acquisition of land. Something I want to read to y'all real fast. So because I'm gonna drive the point further. I'm gonna get it in. You understand? So U.S. acquisition of land. In the past, the U.S. has, because we're talking about getting sovereignty over land. So in the past, the United States has acquired possessive sovereignty over land by 5 methods. These people we live amongst right now, these bandits, right? These colonists, you understand? They possess what? Sovereignty over land by 5 methods. The first was acquisition by treaty. So the Indians yielded much of their land as the result of treaties. Usually, a pecuniary payment was involved, although the Indians did not always view the transfer as a change of sovereignty or a permanent sale, and even though many of the treaties are of questionable validity. I'm not going to read the whole thing, you get the point. Like Indian treaties. We know ODB, a sign unique, peace be upon the God. He said what? My grandfather sold Manhattan to the white man. However the bars go, y'all get the point. So acquisition by treaty. 2, acquisition by purchase. He says most of Louisiana and the land between the Mississippi River and the Rockies from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada was acquired by the United States by a $12 million purchase from France and treaty in 1803. We know the Louisiana Purchase, right? What else? The Gila River Valley in southern Arizona was purchased from Mexico for $10 million. The Gadsden Purchase in 1853. Alaska was purchased from Russia. American Samoa was acquired in 1899 by a combination of purchase and Cold War. The Virgin Islands were purchased in 71 from Denmark for $25 million. We understand the treaties, how America purchased land. Acquired land. But now we understand the purchases of how America acquired land. What's the third way America acquired land? By conquest. Acquisition by conquest, right? The United States acquired Arizona, Western Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and California through American war against Mexico from 1846 to 48. Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines were acquired through the American war against Spain in 1898, right? So this is them banging on each other, right? Now, we know there's indigenous folks in Mexico. However, we know that before America came about acquiring land up there, Spain been done occupied a lot of that shit. You understand? So they was fighting against Spain in a way, but it was Mexico. But that's neither here nor there. 4, acquisition by mutual consent. So the United States acquired a portion of West Florida in 1810 from Spain as a result of declaring themselves U.S. citizens and the U.S. presidents proclaiming an acceptance of this self-determination. The area became part of Louisiana, right? So West Florida, again, you got to remember the West Florida today, if you could picture that with some more added on to it, Spain basically had that. So if you could picture around where Louisiana and all that is and how close it is to Florida, you'll get the picture, or just look it up for a more accurate map. Don't take me on it because I'm just paraphrasing basically. So acquisition by mutual consent, another example of that, right? In 1837, the founders of the Republic of Texas, immediately after establishing their independence constitution, called for U.S. annexation, which was agreed to by the U.S. in a joint resolution of Congress, not a ratification by the Senate in 1845. Indian treaties, purchasing from Spain, purchasing from Denmark, right? Conquering the whole America, mutual consent by dealings with nations they didn't have no beef with, and acquisition by seizure. In 1812, the United States annexed West Florida, belonging to Spain, between the Pearl and the Perdido rivers by a simple act of Congress, and thus provided Mississippi with its Gulf Coast shoreline. In 1898, the United States, by a joint resolution of Congress, not a Senate ratification, annexed the 4-year-old Hawaii Republic. So again, Hawaii was seized. So we get the U.S. acquisition methods. So we understand how this united snakes, we understand how these oppressors, right, of the last few hundred years of our people, right? We know and understand in the Malcolm X doctrine what needs to be done. So here's the U.S.'s acquisition of land and how they did that. So we know all of this is an option. However, as civilized people, we got to understand treaty is possible, right? Of course, eventually, as a nation, purchase anywhere, even more of this country here is possible. Conquest and war, we know that may be something they force us into in attacking a nation. Like I said, being ready to defend yourself. Mutual consent, that's the reparative act, right? Seizure, we know and understand that unless black folks ready to get 100,000 soldiers and go rock somebody's shit, that's pretty much not what we are. Because we understand we're not going to all the countries as new countries. And we're not the type of people naturally to just go somewhere and take their stuff. That's just not what we are. And it's not what we even teach our children in the home. And their home reflects the world, right? So if in our home, we don't teach our children to do that to their brother and sister, to the person down the street or in the neighborhood with toys and shit, then we shouldn't do that, to the other human things of the planet Earth. Now, there's a different thing about mutual consent and treaty and purchase, right? Where governments, right, trade with governments. However, we're talking about the seizure, right, act that the United States, is grievous, horrific act that the United States did to the Amerindian, right, to our people here in the seizure of this land. We're not about using that destructive science, right, to gain sovereignty over land. However, what we will seize it from oppressive powers. Our goal is to seize the world from oppressive powers, not from the human families of the planet Earth that went through war to what? Destroy the oppressors over them. Now it's our turn because we in the belly of the beast. Once we kick them out of here, we can seize the world from their oppression. Once we kick them out of here, once we get them from amongst what? Us, knowing their ways now, we can seize what? All the other parts and square inches of planet Earth for freedom, justice, and equality. And it's really not far-fetched. You watch their movies about space conquest, and you watch they military, they news propaganda about conquesting places in the East, supposedly, and that's real believable to you. Check world news is a different story. Let's get it. B, effects of the presidents on land. It's just a quick section I want to read because it was next and it was important because it helps us get the point. He says, effect of the precedents on land. The precedents make abundantly clear that land and sovereignty can effectively pass between the United States and others by treaty alone and by purchase and treaty. In addition, the precedents of Texas and Hawaii make clear that the United States may, by a mere joint resolution of Congress, acquire sovereignty over self-declared nations and their land. The acquisition of the Mississippi portion of West Florida by a simple act of Congress reinforces this principle. The acquisition of the Louisiana portion of West Florida by mere proclamation of the United States president based on the people's self-determination there can only further what? Support the principle. So C, effect of the precedents on self-determination. The Texas and West Florida, Louisiana portion, right, precedents established the principle that the United States recognizes the express will of the people on the land with respect to choice and sovereignty and nationality. So he goes on to say that a resolution to the founding government of the Texas Republic called for United States annexation of the Texas nation. The new African Declaration of Independence called for separation of the new African nation from the United States. The new Africans call for equal recognition of our declaration, right? So we getting it in. I'm gonna share my screen again. That was the next parts, B and C, and D, right? I'm gonna read right from here. I put it on here because I thought it was real important. It further drives the points. Again, the Malcolm X doctrine, that what? That we must organize upon this land and hold a plebiscite to tell the world that we are free and the land independent, and that after the vote, we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing a nation beyond contradiction. So we will get back to it. Right? Precedents for self-determination and the plebiscites. Here's an example. I'll skip right to 3, most relevant, Puerto Rico. In 1967, the United States held a plebiscite in Puerto Rico for the Puerto Ricans, who are and were at the time classed by the U.S. as United States citizens. The same was the new African, and Virgin Islanders, to determine whether they wished to become a state, remain a commonwealth, or become independent. In 1952, the Puerto Ricans voted whether to accept a continued relationship with the U.S. and the U.S. citizenship, or to be independent without U.S. citizenship. So the U.S., and this ain't no new shit. It's new to us because we got to politically educate ourselves. Because what? Stolen from Africa. So they know about plebiscites. Again, the United States held a plebiscite in Puerto Rico. Prior to the 1967 plebiscite, the U.S. Congress created the United States Puerto Rican Commission on the Status of Puerto Rico. This commission had power to study all factors which may have a bearing on the present and future relationships between the United States and Puerto Rico. 4. Other recent plebiscite actions. The nationality and status of Togoland was settled by United Nations supervised plebiscite in May 1956. Nothing new to the human families of the planet Earth is what I'm talking about. Coming to them, standing up for ourselves and telling the world that this is what we're voting for, it's not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. It's like, duh, it's pretty much common sense for us to carve a piece of this pie, if not everything. Again, the nationality and status of Togoland was settled by a United Nations supervised plebiscite in May 1956. In 1961, the southern section of the British Cameroons voted in a United Nations plebiscite to join the former French-mandated state in the Federal Republic of Cameroon. The northern section voted to join Nigeria. In 1966, the United Nations General Assembly requested Spain to arrange for a plebiscite to permit the people of Spanish Morocco to decide on their nationality, and Spain subsequently agreed. South Africa claims to have offered several times to hold a plebiscite for Namibia, whatever it is. Y'all get my point. He's telling you right here. This is nothing new. It's our time to rise. Like I said, it's a fire in my belly. So it's time for us to what? Like our firstborn, beloved Sahim and the 5% talk. To teach the young and burn the old. This is what? A textbook of ideas behind the new Black nationalism. I'm here to teach the young and burn the old. Today the 8th, that makes today's mathematics, build and destroy. I'm here to build my family and destroy what? The oppressive powers amongst us. It's simple as that. An act authorizing what? Oh, I got that page here. There's something else I want to read from. So an act authorizing negotiations between a commission of the United States and a commission of the Republic of New Africa to determine kind, dates, and other details of paying reparations. Now, a lot of what I'm reading now is from out, so you're familiar with what's past the struggle for land, because we got past that chapter, right? It comes from the Anti-Depression Program of the Republic of New Africa, presented to select members of the U.S. Congress in June 1972. So, talking about the plebiscites that have already been held, right, and the acquisition of land and what I'm about to speak on. This is stuff that's been presented to members of the U.S. Congress before. This ain't nothing new. This is just what? It's called swept under the rug. It's called COINTELPRO. They go into our what? Progressive communities and progressive ciphers, and they plant destruction, or they impede progress, and they what? Repress. So we back, you know, Black folks, like we always come back. We never really stop, but every once in a while we get a jump, you understand, and we get a little more fire under our what? Ass. So just want to make that clear that that's the section I'm reading out of as far as some of these suggestions and this nationalism I'm bringing to y'all. So we're going to keep it going. Again, this is on legislative requests, right? An act authorizing, again, provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. We're talking about the temporary government that our forefathers, right, set up and following the Malcom X doctrine of a vote. And in deciding that this land is the most mathematical choice for our people, right? A land right here to vote upon. Here's some of the legislative requests continued besides Anti-Depression Act and things of that nature, right? Again, I'm reading from Foundations of the Black Nation by Mario Videlli first, right? Second president of the provisional government, or founding provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, founding member, initially Minister of Information, Malcolm, you know, continuing the Malcolm X doctrine. You'll see. So again, an act authorizing negotiations between a commission of the United States and a commission of the Republic of New Africa to determine kind, dates, and other details of paying reparations. Again, we talk reparations, but what new African, what Black political scientists do you have laying it out? Because I hear everyone getting online talking about We gonna get this much and do this with it. They gonna pay us this much every month. They gonna pay us this many billion. It's gonna be spread to this many people. Listen, man. The United States has participated in such commissions in the past. Among those are what? 1. The Allied Reparations Commission. Following World War I, U.S. participated in founding and later through observer and presidential commissions. So they've participated in commissions when it comes to kind, dates, and other details of reparations. This presentation I'm giving, the Anti-Depression Act outlined in here, the Reparative Act outlined by the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, and all these different acts or theories and practices that have been established and laid down and are relevant to this day through different new African independence movements. This ain't nothing new. Again, or now, a four-powered Allied Control Council, which participated in the implementation of World War II reparations judgments against Germany. They've been doing this. The U.S. Indian Claims Commission, empowered to determine claims on a wide basis, including claims based upon fair and honorable dealings that are not recognized by any existing rule of law or equity. The International I spelled that wrong. What is that? The International Joint Commission. The International Joint Commission, United States and Canada, to make provision for the adjustment and settlement of questions concerning U.S. Canadian rights, obligations, and interests, particularly with respect to boundary waters and the frontier. Again, that's a typo, so I got the resource right here. It's the International Joint Commission, United States and Canada, to make provision for the adjustment and settlement of questions concerning the U.S. Canadian rights, obligations, and interests, particularly with respect to boundary waters and the frontier. 5, Foreign Claims Settlement Commission of the United States, to determine claims of the United States nationals against foreign governments for compensation for losses and injuries, and to pay claims from international settlements, liquidation of foreign assets, and public funds. 6, the American Mexican Claims Commission from 1942 to 47, empowered to adjudicate claims of American nationals against the government of Mexico, arising from confiscation or destruction of personal property, injuries of individuals, and miscellaneous cases or denial of justice. 7, the Philippine War Damage Commission, again, an act authorizing negotiations between Commission of the United States and the Commission of the Republic of New Africa to determine the kind, dates, and other details of paying reparations. It's time to bring back the global recognition of reparations commissions right here. You're not gonna let these black politicians stand up, just give their idea of reparations, and whatever president they're in bed with, or whatever Congress members they're in bed with, and Senate and all this they're in bed with, can decide on it. We're not gonna fall into that trap. So get this out. Again, it's your brother B Knowledge of Law, B Knowledge Academy, Black Family Education. This is Foundations of the Black Nation. The Malcolm X Doctrine. We here to do a plebiscite, right? A vote, tell the world we independent and the land independent. But now we what? Got a landhold. Everyone agrees to land and independence and reparations. But what about our state? What about our nation state? Our living quarters? Our actual, our actual what? Claim to land. The latitude and longitude of this thing. Huh? Mississippi, or Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. That's what we're fighting for, and it's internationally lawfully owed to us. So this is what we're pushing for a reparative act. Now, I ain't talking about just no money shit. Yeah, that comes with it. Trust me, that comes with it. However, we're talking about land rights, because land is the basis of freedom. That's what Al-Haj Malik al-Shabazz is talking about. That other bullshit is just bullshit. All that arguing people doing over who killed them, and listen, a lot of that been handled and solved a long time ago amongst those who know. More or less, 8, the resettlement administration, 1935 to 37, to resettle low-income U.S. families. 9, the United States Puerto Rico Commission on the Status of Puerto Rico, 1964, to study all factors on the present and future relationships between the United States and Puerto Rico. And its conclusion to this part in particular. The power of the United States Congress to create a commission to meet with a Republic of New Africa commission to determine kind, date, and other details of paying reparations is abundantly clear. Under the slavery is war theory, the United States president himself could create a commission. There's a couple typos in there. Y'all get the point. Thank you. Be Knowledge Academy. You know what I'm saying? And we will continue to get it in. Again, the fight is for land, right? That's the struggle for land. Our minds were stolen from Africa. Our bodies were stolen from Africa. And as new Africans, Black folks in today's day and time, what we have to do is what? Make a claim to land right here. And I'll read it one more time before I go, because it's just so important. It's just so important. It's very, very important. The Malcolm X doctrine. I not only believe, I accept. I always, I accept the Malcolm X doctrine that we must organize upon this land. See, it's so logical because of how America conquested this land. You would say, oh, they have rights to it, or they have the right to hold it down. We get that, even though it is not really right, or as far as justice and honesty, righteousness is concerned, it's not theirs. But in realism, it's theirs. You understand? So if they got rights to it internationally, all the human families understand, regards to how they got it, it's theirs, and they all agree to it. In the majority Black and Asian United Nations, they all agree to it, and their conquest over the other lands they have. Being we built this, like I said, we have more claim to it than them. Again, we have more claim to it all than the white Americans do. However, the Malcolm X doctrine, that we must organize upon this land and hold a plebescite to tell the world that we are free in the land independent, that we are free in the land independent, and that after the vote, we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing the nation beyond contradiction. Peace.